Good morning, good afternoon. It's 12:01, so afternoon for me. Good morning for maybe good evening for somebody I don't even know. So I think I have the whole switching cameras thing worked out, so I can talk to you a little, and then I'll switch to the other camera that's showing my spinning wheel, and I can show you what I'm doing with my hands. I have my questions written down that you guys sent me kindly, and I'm going to start with answering. There was a question about weak fleece and how many spots you test, how many spots I test for a weak fleece. When I'm at a fiber festival, if I'm buying for myself and I test the fleece, I'll usually test 2 spots, but normally if you find a weak spot, it's almost always throughout the entire fleece, because the weakness happens often because of change in feed, or there was lambing, or I don't know, a storm came and it upset the sheep. Lots of different things can change the way a fleece grows. A weak fleece isn't necessarily a deal breaker. It depends on a whole bunch of things. How weak is it? Is it an actual break that you can see when you look at it? Or is it just really fine fibers the entire length of the staple? If that's the case, then you probably just want to handle it a little bit more gently when you process it. Maybe you don't want to process it at all. You just want to wash it and spin it from the lock without any processing at all. So I don't necessarily throw it out for a weak fleece, or even for a break. I don't necessarily throw it out if it's a longer staple and the break is at one end. Then you can break that little bit of fleece off and still have a really nice fleece at the end, and maybe you got a good deal with it for it because it did have a break. So I usually test 2 places. If I'm judging fleeces, I'll test 2 or 3, just to be sure, so that the fiber producer knows that I'm being thorough. But for myself, one place usually tells me if it's going to be weak in lots of other places too. The other question, this was from Greg, the other question from Greg was about, everybody talks about sorting your fleece. When you go to, like if you're taking a class about, I can't remember the name of that course that you go and it takes 6 years, and it's in Canada. I don't know. Anyway, if you're taking those courses, they're going to show you, they're going to spread a fleece out. You're going to buy a fleece, you're going to spread it out, you're going to separate it, and you're going to spin different yarns from each different place, and show the difference of how a fleece will change over the whole sheep's body. So the neck fleece we know is usually finer than, obviously, the back end of the sheep is going to be more coarse, almost in every breed. Not every breed, but almost in every breed. That's one of the things you want to look at in certain breeds is consistency. Other breeds, you're not going to get that consistency from one end of the sheep to the other. When I'm spinning for a project like this, say you buy a 4 or 5 pound fleece, and you lose 50% when you wash it. So now you're down to 2 or 2.5 pounds, and then you're going to lose some 10% to 15%, sometimes even 20% in the processing. Maybe you're going to get rid of some of it. So now you're down to 2 pounds or 1.5 pounds, which is what you need for your whole sweater. And so I don't do that separating thing, what I do is I make sure that when I'm blending or when I'm processing and when I'm spinning all the pieces. I mix up the fleece. And so it's all blended together. So it doesn't really make a difference. Now, on the other hand, you know, if you want to make a wedding ring shawl or you want to make something gossamer weight yarn, then you want to do the separating. You want to take those finer wools. If you want to make yourself some underwear, you want to take the finer wools because, you know, scratchy. So definitely it depends on the project, but normally in everyday spinning, I don't usually do that for myself. It's a great thing to know, and it's a good thing to understand, and it's a thing, you know, if you bring home a fleece that you can unroll and look at the whole thing, then definitely it's a great exercise to put yourself through. But for general spinning, I don't even think about that. So I think that was all of Greg's questions, and now the rest of the questions, I'm going to demonstrate some things. And I didn't write down anybody's name, and I'm really sorry about not writing down who asked what question. But the first question was about my sampling process and what I learned in the sampling process and how I make decisions from there. So I'm going to switch cameras, and I'm going to show you exactly how I go about this. So switching. I'm going to go black for just a second while it switches. Okay, there. Hopefully you can see it. So here's my trusty matchless. My matchless is the wheel that I use if I'm writing an article. It's a slower wheel for me. It doesn't spin as fast as some of my other wheels that I use for production. So my matchless is the wheel that I go to for making samples and writing articles, because it's easier for me to see what twists per inch I have and what ratios I have, and it's easier for me to slow down and take my time. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate on today. The wheel that I'm going to choose for the sweater spinning that I'm going to make is my Shack Reeves. I'm spinning right now some fine merino, and that's on Martha. She's my Speedy Gonzalez wheel. So let me talk about making my samples. So this is just some Cheviot wool, Cheviot top. Yeah. So if I was just starting out with this and I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do, the first thing I do is I just sit down and get a feel for the wool. How fluffy is it? How easy does it draft? How what does it look like in the singles? This is a pretty it gives you a little bit of hair. I know you can't see that on the camera, but you can see me pulling these little fibers that are sticking out because it's a coarser wool, and so it doesn't bend as easily into the yarn that you're making. And so right now I'm drafting one draft per treadle, which means every time my left foot goes down, I'm doing one draft. That's kind of my starting place for every single thing. So here's my plyback sample. Often I'll make this a little bit bigger for myself, but here's my plyback sample from one draft per treadle. I'm going to put a piece of paper behind there so you can see it. Now see that? That to me, wait, it's trying to focus and then it keeps going out. There it is. Okay, so that to me, I love that twist angle. I love that twist angle. And for a fiber that's like this, that's a little bit more coarse, this is nice because you're at about 30 degrees. I know a lot of people spin at like a 45-degree twist angle. I like a lower, looser twist unless I'm going to spin something that I need to last a long time. So socks or, like a really sturdy jacket that I want to spin. But for everyday wear, I like a little bit looser. And this has a decent staple length. And so it's definitely going to pill a little bit, but not too bad. And the great thing about hand spun yarn is if you spin it well, you're going to have a little bit of pilling at the beginning, and then the pilling will stop. So now I'm going to make a 3-ply sample. Let me show you this and compared to the 2-ply. There's the 3-ply. Let's see if I can get that focus. There. Oh, that's a beautiful thing. There's the 2-ply. Now I know I said this before. I really, really like a 3-ply for a sweater. See how round that yarn is? It's going to fill in all the spaces. If I'm going to do, it keeps focusing and then refocusing, and I wish it would stop. There. See how round that is compared to the 2-ply? It fills in. If you're going to do stockinette stitch, if you're going to do some cables, it makes a really nice base for cables to stand up on. I just really like a 3-ply for a sweater. I know a lot of people do a 2-ply, and that's fine. If that's what you're choosing to go for it. But the 3-ply is the thing. But I always do make a 2-ply sample because I'm going to make my card. So here's my sample card. You guys, I posted these on Patreon there's a link to these, and you can just print them out on cardstock. So here's my 3-ply sample. I punched 2 holes, and I'll put that through there. Here's my 2-ply sample. Now, there, and then I'll take the yarn that I have, the singles here, and I'll wrap several times around my card. So now what this does, I've got everything here that I need. So here are my singles, so that as I'm spinning, I can just hold my yarn up to my wheel here, put it next to my singles, make sure that I'm still spinning the same size yarn. And these plied samples are freshly plied. So now you know when you finish spinning and it's time to ply. This is your balanced yarn. This is the yarn that if you want a balanced yarn, that's what you're going to go for. I don't necessarily always go for a balanced yarn, and I'm going to talk about that in a couple of seconds. But let me finish. Now, on the back here, I'm just going to take these 2 ends, and I tie them together because I never know where my tape is. You can tape them on the back, but see, you just tie it there. Everything's there. And then I'm going to fill this in. So this is Cheviot. This is top, my matchless and double drive, what the whirls are that I'm using. My draft to treadle ratio, it's 1 draft per 1 treadle, and I don't ever count both feet. So if I was doing 2 drafts per treadle, which means 2 drafts per each time my left foot goes down, that means that's what I would put as 2 drafts per treadle. Or it's 1 draft per 2 treadles. It depends on if you're trying to get lower twist or higher twist. The drafting method I used on this was short forward draw, and then any notes that I want to put. Anything that I found interesting. Maybe you want to note what the staple length was of this particular top, because then the next time you get new Cheviot top, if you want to reproduce this, you can definitely go back and make sure that you're using a similar a similar staple length, because the staple length is going to change how it drafts, and it's going to change how long you can draft, what the drafting length is. Hopefully that makes sense. So what I get from these plyback samples, now I'm going to make several samples from this, right? So now I just did a worsted draft, and this fiber is short enough that I could do a supported long draw. Oops. So that's going to give me even fuzzier yarn. So let's look. Let's do a 2-ply. Let's do a 3-ply actually. Let's do a 3-ply. Now here's my 3-ply woolen spun. Now I wasn't counting treadles there. I just wanted to give you an idea of what this looks like. See how much fuzzier it is? Oh, maybe this way. There, see how much fuzzier that is? And fluffier. My singles for this were not that different, but look at how much fluffier the 3-ply woolen spun yarn is, how much more airy. See that? So that's sort of what I'm looking for. You know, if I want to make a finer sweater, I want something that I can wear to the movies in the summertime, then I'm probably going to want a more worsted yarn, because it's not going to be so hot. My 3-ply woolen yarn is going to be a warmer sweater, something that maybe you can even wear outside in the wintertime. I have my Jacob sweater, which is a perfectly warm, it's not for, 10-degree days, but on a 30-degree day, it's perfectly warm and fine to wear outside. And that was a woolen spun 3-ply that I spun from Rolex. So hopefully that answered your question. That's what I'm looking at. I'm comparing. Sometimes you can do a woolen draft with fiber, and the woolen and the worsted look very similar to each other. And then that's when you take it to the next step before you make a decision about it. You make yourself enough yarn, 10 yards or so of plied yarn, make yourself a swatch of each. That's going to give you even more information. But sometimes the plyback sample is enough to move on. Normally, if it's a new kind of fiber, a new fleece, then I'm going to make between 3 and 5 different kinds of samples. Like you could do something spin from the fold, one from the woolen from the end, woolen from the fold, worsted from the fold, worsted from the end. You could make Rolex out of it, whatever you want to do, and then make that decision. And then the next question is, why choose one fleece over another? Well, so let me show you. I have these samples. All right, so I can tell you that all of these yarns, actually, I'll show you. All of these yarns that I'm going to compare were a similar thickness. And then I'll show you the swatches. Do you see? Maybe. No. There. There. See how all those yarns are a similar thickness? Now let me show you the swatches. This is Polypay. Take a good look at that. Cormo. Merino. See the difference in the fabric? And the fabrics even feel a little different. This one is more, it's a firm fabric. It would be a really nice sweater that has some kind of stability to it, some kind of body. This is soft. It's not as drapey as I'd like, but look at those cables. And then this one looks more rustic. All of those yarns were spun. They were flicked. They all started from raw fleece. They were flicked, and then I spun them from the cut end with a short forward draw, every single one of them, and I made them all the exact same thickness in the end. They're all, yep, all 3-plies. So every single yarn I spun the exact same thing, but you get these fabrics look different and they feel different. So that's why it's important to make samples and then hold on to your samples so that when you come back the next time, you don't have to redo all that work. You might have to make a tiny little sample to make sure it's not this fleece isn't completely different, but kind of awesome. All right, so hopefully that answered that question. Now, here's what let me talk about somebody asked a question about, and I'm not sure if I understand her question correctly, about in her yarn, the yarn seems to be she's spinning and then there's lots of twist in some areas and then other areas when she plies it there's hardly any twist. And I think, let me get my piece of paper in the background. I think she's talking about maybe like that. It's not showing up very well. That's why I decided to go with the light. Oh, there. There's a lot of twist. There's a lot of twist in here and a little bit of twist in here. So let me show reasons that might happen. This is Corriedale. Okay, so my Corriedale, this Corriedale's not super long, like 3 inches. Okay, now there's 3 reasons for that twist to seem uneven. 3 reasons that I know about. Oops. One of the things is if you're a long drafter, I'm going to do this a little bit exaggerated, but see how, let me make it fatter. See how I've got this thick spot and a thin spot and a thick spot and a thin spot right in my yarn? Can you see that? Right there, that's going to end up with twists like that. This is a little bit exaggerated, so But see how this has almost no twist, and there's lots, you know, relatively lots of twist in here. That's because the twist is going to automatically run to the thin spots. And so if you're spinning a thick and thin yarn, your thin spots are going to definitely have more twist than your thick spots do. That's just how it works. And so to get a more consistent twist, I don't draft any more than half a staple length. So this fiber is 3 inches long. I'm not going to draft more than 1 to 1.5 inches. That's going to give me more consistency immediately. Right off the bat, I'm going to get more consistent yarn. The next thing I think about, which I've talked about several times here in this video, is to keep your feet in rhythm with your hands. And so draft and slide and draft and slide and draft and slide. 1, 2, 1, 2. So if I'm thinking about 1 foot, 1, 2, 1, 2. So this is 1 draft per treadle. No, that's not right. 1 draft per 2 treadles. Does that make sense? So if I draft 1 draft per 2 treadles, I'm going to have the same amount of twist throughout this entire yarn, especially if my draft is the same length every time. Now I'm back to 1 draft per treadle. You can also do 2 drafts per treadle. That's about as fast as I can go. And then I've got to go to a smaller whirl, which this wheel doesn't have a smaller whirl. Well, it does have one more smaller groove that I can go to. So uneven thickness, uneven treadling. So you want to keep your hands and feet in rhythm with each other. And uneven drafting, you want to draft the exact same amount every single time. And so right now I'm talking about short forward draw, but the same thing happens if you're going to do long draw. So if draft, 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 and I find a point, like right now this arm of this chair would be my point to stop at, I would count treadles. So if I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to hold 4, 5, and then I'm going to put it on 3. So that was 13 treadles. And so every single time, now this, my forward hand, I usually hold, so that's my stopping point at the forward end. Arm of the chair is my stopping point at the back end. I know I'm going to hold for 5 treadles. So draft back 5, hold 5, push forward 3. 13 treadles every single time. And that is going to get you consistency. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. I know that you guys are all working right now and can't be watching, but later on, definitely send me some questions. Okay, so I'm going to do one more thing, which is I have this Corriedale. Remember, this Corriedale was in the running. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. That was in the running. So I like to flick. I think it's an easy way to process. So I wouldn't take any more than this. You want to take, you don't want to flick anything fatter than, the thickness of your thumb. I'm going to put a twist here, pull my flicker through, fold it, turn it over, see, all open, turn it around and put the twist in the other side, and then do the exact same thing. And then take both sides and squidgy, and everything's open and ready to go. Now, this fleece is really clean, and I like to spin from the cut end. So let me just show you one more thing. If you're not sure which is the cut end, The reason I like to spin from the cut end is because the way the scales grow, it's smoother on my hands and I can feel it, and I feel like the fibers move past each other easier that way, so that's why I do it. So if you put the lock in your hand and wiggle your thumb, your fingers are going to walk toward the tip. So I know this is the tip, this is the cut end, so this is the side I'm going to spin from. Does that make sense? Now, you could spin a whole bunch of samples from these locks. So this is my flicked and short forward draw. Still, I'm not going to do longer than half a staple length. So there's one sample you could make. You could fold it over, spin from the fold. I don't fold it over my finger. I just hold it between my thumb and my forefinger. There's my spin from the fold. And you could spin from the fold woolen, and you could spin from the fold worsted. So there's that. That's going to give you a really fluffy yarn right there. This is kind of long. It's kind of a long staple to do woolen. I mean, you can, but it pulls everything, and I think it would be harder to get a consistent yarn. But you can play with it. See, it's working. But there's, you know, no, actually, I'm lying. That's a very nice yarn. So you could do a woolen yarn too. But see how there's a little bit of fluffiness? That would be beautiful. So those are the samples I would make if I were gonna flick from a fleece. Okay, I'm gonna switch you back. Okay, hopefully I answered your questions, but you know, feel free to comment on this video and send me some follow-up questions, and I'll try and answer them as well as I can. Our next question and answer video is going to be in April. So hopefully you guys, the Slack channel, if you're not on there, the Slack channel seems to be having a ton of conversation, which I love. The Facebook page is not as engaging right now. And so if you're not on the Slack channel, come over and join us, and I'll keep showing you my progress with my samples. I haven't made very many samples. I've been I have a whole big thing this weekend, so I've been focusing on that. But anyway, so hope that everything's going well. I hope you guys are sampling. If I can help you with anything, please let me know, and I'll see you soon.